Okay. Hi, everyone. This is John Doyle from optixeq, and I got a great team with me to preview the Kentucky Derby on September this year. So what was it, September 5th or 6th, right? Something like that. First Saturday in September. And I got with me Emily Gullickson, also from optixeq. She does the work for Brisnet also, and Twin Spires. Donald Harris, Clocker Extreme, the man. And from Twin Spires, Scott Shapiro, the host of Who Do You Like, right?
Who do you like, amongst other things?
Sure. We're going to find out who Scott likes in the Kentucky Derby this year. And the way I thought we'd, initially kick it off, we're going to look at Derby past, and we're going to look at how optics kind of viewed the Derbies and see if we can pick up some, trends of past Derbies and see if we can apply them to this year's Derby. So that's what we're going to do. And then after that, we're just going to do a horse by horse kind of analysis, take a look at the form cycle, take a look at all the information, optics notes on these horses, their speed figures, etc. Okay. So if you look at what we have up there, these are the winners of the past Derbies, and this goes, let me just move this here if I can. Okay, this is from 2008 to 2019, of last year. And you'll see in 2019, I have two horses because Maximum Security won the race, but he was disqualified, and Country House was the winner. So I really kind of want to look at the analysis just with Maximum Security, but I think it's fair to put both those horses in there. It kind of skews things, I think, a little bit, but that's okay. We'll just have Country House there and Maximum Security. So the way this is broken down.
Well, wait, I think it does prove your later point, actually, because he did finish on the board, so.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, when I get to the, when I go through this, and you'll see what we're talking about. So this is just kind of laid out. The winner is highlighted. Either they were a circle or a square. And you can see, the first point we're making, all the quadrant one winners that were there, both circles and squares. And quadrant three seem to dominate, winners of the Derby. And you'll notice that the circles, the Q1 circles, the one thing I want to say about those winners is that they were the smallest circles, right? So you've seen optics where you have the bigger the circle, the less efficient the horse is closing and finishing the race. These were all small circles, okay? So it's important to note. Mine, that bird was a Q3 circle, which is kind of a complete like a complete out of the box kind of thing. That horse, I mean, the whole day in that race seemed to be kind of defy logic. But anyway, he was the only Q3 circle that is actually finished in the superfecta, okay? Since we've been doing this, since 2008. So when you're looking at this, really Q1 squares and Q3 squares are probably the strongest winners, have the strongest sense of winning. So, and it's been really formful lately. Like you guys, when they, when did they start? About 2014 when they started going to the point system. And you really started getting much more, I think, legitimate, you get rid of these speed horses that were kind of a little bit runoffs or whatever, horses that really didn't fit, weren't capable going a mile and a quarter. We got a lot more, I think, formful since then, especially within optics plot. It got more formful in like the last 5 or 6 years, I would say. And you can see that in just the numbers, the squares dominating. So the Q3, the Q2 and Q4 circles have never won. Okay, so they're pretty much tosses. And in fact, a Q4 circle has never finished in the top 4. So an easy way when we start looking at the plot to maybe eliminate horses, at least at first glance, but might be to look at some of those Q4 and Q3 circles, and Q2 circles actually too. Late pace is the key. You want a horse that's a square, so upgrade the squares. They're 2.5 times more likely to finish in the trifecta. And I think the super too, maybe even more. So even when you're looking to try to maybe distinguish between a couple of horses that may round out your bottom of your exotics, look for the squares. You want horses finishing. Obviously, with a 20-horse field, it's all about trip. So especially a horse that doesn't have much finish, gets in trouble, you want to kind of avoid those types of horses. And then Q4 squares have been really interesting, and it really would have happened last year. Q4 squares are really good at finishing up the exacta, finishing second. They got the highest percentage of second place finishes. And Country House was designated for that. And in fact, when we actually put our analysis out last year, we gave a couple of tickets for trifectas and so forth. We had the winning ticket, but the disqualification kind of knocked it out. I think it was somewhere in the 5 digits or something, I think the trifecta paid. So anyway, so that's just the trends. So when we look at, we're going to look at the plot at least the preliminary plot. And make sure when you're doing this, you want to look at the latest plot with the scratches. There'll probably be some changes here. Don't know how many, but at least gives us an idea and gives you an idea of how to focus on this. And what I try to do with this is just put the labels. I mean, sometimes it's hard to read where exactly these horses are because they're on top of each other. So on the right-hand side, I just wanted to point out, where these horses actually reside. And you can see the Q1 horses, the squares that we were talking about, would be the one, Tis the Law, the morning line favorite, probably most likely second choice art collector, honor AP. All the favorites are really kind of falling in, with the exception of probably New York Trafficking, Caraco. How do you say that? Is that how you say it?
Caracaro.
So those horses are the ones that fit the Q1 squares. You can see all the Q3, Q4 circles. Those horses are kind of horses that we typically would toss. Q4 squares, those are the ones we talked about, maybe running underneath in the exacta, at least in previous derbies we've seen it. So as we go through this and analyze the race, keep these things in mind. And again, once we do our final analysis, we'll include this information in our final package, and it's going to be for sale. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I wanted to bring the team in and start talking about, let's just kind of go to.
Before we go kind of by horse, can we keep this up for?
Yeah, sure.
As far as like the quadrants and the win in the past compared with like the contention speed rate, because this year I know I'm trying to go off memory. I should have just pulled these up. It felt like there was a light on one, a lot of Justifies, American Pharaoh, even Maximum Security kind of looked like a lone square out there in quadrant one, kind of had that advantage. And this year, looking at the plot, we have the Sun contention and the 43 speed rate. So how does that compare to years past in terms of contention and speed rate?
Yeah, it hasn't been really much different. It really hasn't. This might have a little bit more. That's a good point. It might have a little bit more, but I don't think it's drastically different than in years past. So I don't, your guess is how's it going to play out? I mean, I think when you get to races like this, the mile and a quarter, and like I said, since they've instituted this new system, I don't think you have like horses that run off or need, go crazy. I think these horses basically are all rateable. They're all trying to conserve for the mile and a quarter. So it doesn't come across as one of those races where everyone kind of guns for the lead. Now, post position will probably play a role in that, when they eventually get the post positions and where they draw. But for now, I don't know. You might be onto something. I'm just not seeing it based on the run styles of the horses and
I'm gonna do a little research while we're going through it.
I think there seems to be, just to jump in, I think there might not be a lot of crazy have to go to the lead speed horses, but I get the sense looking at this field that there's like at least 8 horses that want to be in the same spot. So I agree with you, John, that, post position is going to play a pretty vital role this year to seeing how things are going to shape up. But there's a scenario where I could see it being pretty contentious.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Derby's always kind of contentious. But, I think when I look at this plot, because initially it's like you really have some dominant horses in that quadrant one. And they could, like I said, any of those horses can stalk or they can go to the lead. And I just think they dominate the other horses. Like, so the 1, 3, and 4 are dominant, look like in quadrant one to me. Maybe they mix it up a little bit, but they all have finishability in them. And I don't know, it all depends on post position and jockey intention, trainer intention, obviously. Who gets the trip. That's always going to be the issue that just because it's 20 horses, there's always going to be contention. But I just think the good horses overcome that. And in this case, we got to, the thing is about this race, when I first looked at it, we got really 3 or 4 horses that really look good. I mean, Tis the Law, obviously, but, Art Collector and Honor AP are no slouches. It's good, that in that sense, I don't think it's going to be the walkover, that some people are talking about with Tis the Law, especially the fact that, we'll get into it maybe when we talk more about, the individual races, especially with the prep, like a mile and a quarter out of Saratoga. I'm not completely sure that's, that he's peaking for this race. I think he's peaked already. So it'll be interesting to see.
Just real quick, the last 3 years, Kentucky Derby 2017, 18, and 19, the contention was all snowflake with the speed rate 20 in 2019, 20 in 2018, and 28 in 2017.
All right, good. No, good. That's good. So you're right. It's going to be more contention and higher speed rating. So yeah, good point. Okay, so let's go to plot. Get rid of this stuff. I mean the grid. Let's go to the grid. Okay. We're going to just do this horse by horse, and since Donald saw this last race, I'm going to start with you, Donald Harris. 'Tis the law. What do you think?
Well, I mean, going into the Travers, he'd always been a horse I thought of that was going to be best at like a mile. I never saw him as a 1.25 mile horse, but the way he won and the fact that he finished up the way he did kind of completely changed my view of him. You think he already peaked? I thought he did it so easy, which was kind of the surprising part of it, where he kind of breezed to the lead, didn't really have to do that much work. He probably ran for like a furlong, and then the rider just coasted in with him. The one thing I will say is the way he gets beat is if he ends up having to sit in one of those pocket trips, because that's a couple times when he's found himself in trouble, because Manny Franco gets a little panicky. That return race at Gulfstream, the Holy Bull, when he got crowded, he grabbed and found himself in trouble. Now, he's such a good athlete that he overcame it and still won. But the race before that, when he sat the pocket trip, that was, his one loss, where he just didn't quite have his usual, I don't know if you want to call it a burst, but he had every chance to win that race and just couldn't quite get it done. So that's the trip that gets him beat. And he's found a way in these fields to get outside and, sit the garden. So it'll be interesting to see if he can get that trip again.
You noticed that trip was at Churchill too, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I remember watching that race, and that's when I said, "Oh, this horse is never going to get him a quarter after that race." I know he had trouble there, but I just think he didn't finish it all. I was like, my goodness. And then
it wasn't a great trip, but he's supposed to win there.
Yeah,
he finally got room, and he had every chance, and just couldn't. I mean, he worked his ass off. He just couldn't get it done. So I kind of came away with the same impression that. And he's kind of built that for me. He was built like a miler, but he's.
Look, we had a one turn here, and I did this note.
Thanks a lot.
He's looking at his champagne. So, there you go.
Wrong again, Doyle.
See, hey, we keep it there, right? We don't go and adjust things.
Another thing I'll add, just in terms of like form. I mean, obviously, if there are those concerns. This is going to be the first time ever that he run unless he Davis. All of his other races have been off a break, and that's when you're talking about a horse that's going to be a favorite, and you kind of like are really looking to like poke holes. But that's a big thing to note, especially for the fact, John, that you mentioned this before in terms of having that 10 furlong prep even before that race even happened, of that being kind of a it could be a potential negative, right? Doing too much for a horse, maybe horse is not, finding that distance to where they want to go. And yeah, he was geared down late, but again, I mean, that's not always the best thing. I mean, you want to see horses finish, and I know maybe, there's some reserve in the tank, whatever, but he still ran hard for 9 furlongs. And so I think those are factors that are probably going to get, ignored, and I think that are important in a horse like this.
Well, let me ask you a question on this, Donald. You did this one, but what's this no line? Because to me, that's a negative for the horse not keeping a straight line. That's just me. So when did this happen in the race, and what was it all about?
I don't know if the horse just gets. I mean, he's always by himself, so sometimes horses just get a little goofy. I don't consider it that big of a deal. I really don't. Just because when he did finally level out, when he corrected so quickly and leveled out so nice that it's not like one of those deals where he was consistently shifting about. he started to shift, the rider corrected him, and he leveled out on a dime. So
Right.
for me, it's not overly concerning. What Emily just brought up, I think is huge. I mean, that's a major factor. The fact that he runs 1.25 miles and then he's going to come back and be asked to run another big race off a different kind of cycle. That's a really strong point.
Yeah. And again, you know, it's a much crowded field. So, I mean, any kind of shifting about sometimes it's a little bit more difficult, as maximum security found out in the Derby there. All right. So anything else, Scott, what do you think? Anything else to add on this horse?
Well, I think he's going to be tough. I think he's mentally matured. I think I saw a lot of quirkiness when he got caught on the inside in those 2-year-old races, and even the Kentucky Jockey Club when he should have won that race. And I, like you guys, wasn't convinced that this horse was overly special. And then in the Holy Bull, kind of as Donald mentioned, man, he kind of panicked, but he got him off the rail. But what I saw in the Belmont and the Travers is a little bit of a different racehorse, and I think they've managed this horse well. I think he looks more professional. And I think he's kind of got that tactical speed I didn't think he had in the Travers. I thought he was going to be further off the early pace and thought he was beatable that day, especially at that price. But if he's going to, you know, be able to sit so close to the pace or be 4 or 5 lengths off if need be, it gives him an advantage. And yeah, I don't want, if I'm betting a favorite, you know, I'm looking to poke holes too. And if he's on the inside, I'm concerned because of what's happened in the past. But I think the way they manage this horse, I'm not worried about him coming back so, you know, quicker than ever before, because this has been the plan from day one. And I just don't see him regressing in this spot, unfortunately, because he's going to be a significant favorite. But he's legit, in my opinion.
You say the plan was to run the Derby in September?
Well, no, but at the Florida Derby, after the Florida Derby, they knew like they could have gone to the Arkansas Derby.
Yeah, I'm just messing with you.
Yeah, no. It's good. It's a good point and a good, you know. But I feel like they've managed, I mean, in an impossible situation, they've managed this horse incredibly well. And I don't know if I think he's peaked. I wanted to think so until that Travers, like you said, Donald, he showed me things I never thought I would think about him.
You know, I think the thing is if it was Barclay Tagg, it was just like if he didn't have the ownership he had, this horse would have skipped the Travers, don't you think?
Very, very possible. Yeah. I mean, that is certainly the case. And I was super worried about it. So I don't want to act as if I didn't think it was ideal for winning the Derby, running in the Travers, but just the way he did it, he just seems to be a little bit classier than his opposition in here. So I think he's clearly the horse to beat.
But, you know, it just seems like, you know, those horses that do well in the Triple Crown races cycle out usually or just get rest during the fall. And this horse is running during the fall. So, you know, it'll be interesting. But, you know, they always seem to need a break, you know, and this seems like, well, we'll see. I'll tell you the truth, though. Barclay Tagg's done a masterful job with this horse because he's doing things with this horse I didn't think this horse was capable of doing. So good job. All right, we'll go. I'm going to skip the 2 just for now, just so we can get some of the major contenders here. So we're going to go to Art Collector, and I'm going to have Scott start off because I know he's seen this horse quite a number of times at Churchill and Keeneland. So, Scott.
Yeah, I've been following this horse for quite some time. Kind of found out early on in his career that he was legit from, you know, when he was in the Joe Sharp barn and been following me at the Super Trouble trip and November 9th and came back on November 30th. You guys have the troubled note there, and then had the wide and one easy in the slop that day and was given time off, and then was training at Tom Jury's barn, and Skylight is called out here, but then returned in a 7 furlong affair and got the total set up that day. And, you know, he beat pretty good horses that day. Never dreamed that he would be a Kentucky Derby contender after that race, but had the perfect setup, and he's continued to have perfect setups. And, you know, you see him consistently putting up big figures, whatever you're looking at. I see on the optics fig, just 3 middle 100, you know, bang, bang, bang. But that first race, the June 13th race, it was a 4-horse field where there was no other speed, and he galloped on the lead, and yeah, he pulled away late, but it's just not a race that I think is real worthy of getting too much attention when you're looking at a 20-horse field with the Kentucky Derby with a much stronger talent. And then in the Bluegrass, again, he had a perfect trip off of Chivalry, and who's a long shot on the lead, as well as the filly, Swiss Skydiver. And he got the best of them and did so impressively. But again, perfect trip. And then in the Ellis Park Derby, you know, he had to work, but that was just a significantly lesser field. So I think this horse is serious, as it says here, proving he's a serious racehorse. I still wonder about a mile and a quarter, but my biggest concern for him is if he doesn't get out of the gate into that perfect spot, how he'll deal with maybe dirt kicked in his face or even just serious contention with other class horses. I have a lot of respect for him, but as the second choice, I think he's probably a horse I'm going to end up fading, but I didn't like seeing that plot. It's pretty discouraging for trying to beat him.
I think the 10 furlongs is going to be a problem for him. You know, that's, you know, I did that last Ellis note. But he's serious, man. He's a nice racehorse. I just think 10 furlongs. I think class wise and 10 furlongs are kind of some of the things. Emily, what do you think with this guy?
Yeah, no, I agree with all that. I mean, I know he looks good on the plot, but of course, like as Scott mentioned, he looks good on the plot. The reason is because he's been able to get those trips that are so quick, right? And been able to record those strong speed figures with a good finish. Yeah, when he goes in, he's got to go an extra furlong. He's got to run against, you know, kind of much tougher company. I mean, even in the Bluegrass, it was, you know, kind of a perfect trip, and he wins by 3 lengths, and he still only be optics grade, you know. So there wasn't really anything there that was like, you know, suggesting that he's going to move forward and continue. Ellis Park Derby, you know, I don't know in terms of that would be a grade, but yeah, this is a test. So I'm kind of with Scott of probably on a fade at a short price.
Anything to add, Donald, on him?
No, I can't really add anything.
Okay.
He's a nice horse. The question is the distance, and like the rest of these horses, a lot of them have to answer the question of dealing with, you know, the amount of traffic that none of them have come close to dealing with before.
I would love them for the Pennsylvania Derby. Are they going to run that this year? I don't even know.
I think that's canceled. I think I saw it was
That would
canceled.
have been
Yeah.
right up his alley, you know. Okay, we're gonna shift over to this horse. I'm gonna have Emily start because this is a Southern Cal horse, Honor AP, another major contender here. What do you think?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think distance will be any problem for this horse. He just looks like he's got a ton of class and a ton of stamina. It's hard to knock anything that he's ever done. Everything in the grid, it's B's, it's positives. Keep kind of moving forward. I mean, last time out in the shared belief, I gave both him and then the winner, 1,000 Words, who was got a lone front end trip, both B's in that race. So I thought his effort was really good. It just was the trip just kind of compromised him there on the win end. So take nothing away from that. He looks good coming out of the race, you know, seen him work since. So I think there's more positives with him, even though you could say the same thing. He's never kind of run back on a short rest. Now, granted, 28 and 35 is different, but not having to fully extend himself, you know, going 8.5 that day, that a move forward is possible. And I think he just looks, you know, just pretty legit in this spot.
Donald?
I don't know the horse, so I don't want to make a comment. I really haven't seen him race. I mean, my initial thought on California is that it wasn't as tough as other places, but that may be because I'm not there and I'm biased.
I think that's probably pretty accurate, to be honest. I mean, a lot of the good California horses ended up kind of going out of town and things like that. And I mean, even this race, you can see in there, it's a 4-horse field. But again, I don't think this is a horse. I think maybe more horses is maybe better, to be honest.
You know, the other thing I like, you know, Emily and I talk about this all the time, right? One thing I like is the horse gets a B+ at a grade 1 race, especially one that's like, you know, 9 furlongs or more, especially going into the Derby. That's really, to me, that's what I want to compare when I compare horses in optics grid to one another. That's the one thing I look at, how they perform in grade 1s, what's their grade in those grade 1s, and, you know, make sure the distance and surface is kind of close to where they, you know, are going to be positioned today in terms of, you know, what the conditions are. So, Scott, the Honor AP, anything more to add on that?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this horse going into the race. I mean, tis the law to me the most likely winner, but from a gambling perspective, I think Honor AP has a lot of the things I'm looking for, and will be, I assume, 7-8 to 1. I don't take anything away from this horse for the effort and the shared belief. Emily mentioned most of it, but there was no speed in there. That was the ultimate prep race. There was nothing to gain from any perspective. The only, it was $100,000 race. It was
Right.
a field with no speed. The only reason this horse raced in it is to get a race before the
Right.
Kentucky Derby. So if that race bothers you, then I think you draw a line through it, pretend it didn't happen. The 1.25 miles should be fine. I know he's a quadrant 1 square, but he's not a horse that needs the lead or anything close to that. So I think he should get a really good trip if the pace is contentious. Hopefully his rider decides to save a little more ground than he has in other instances, but I'm a pretty big fan of Honor AP. I was kind of happy the way the last race went because I thought it was going to help his price, and he's probably a key horse for me in this year's Derby.
Cool. I like him too. I think he's a legitimate contender. I'm going to just go to the 5 because I'm just covering the Q1 squares. So New York Traffic. I guess I probably should talk about this one a little bit. I think he ran huge. He completely outran his odds in the Haskell. But I think he benefited from the track that day. The track was favoring early speed, and it was him and that Baffert horse. What's the Baffert horse again? I forget which one. Authentic? Was it Authentic?
Authentic.
Yeah, Authentic. They kind of just went around the track, and Authentic held him off, and he ran gamely. But Authentic's not. I don't think Authentic's going to get a mile and a quarter. He's in this race too. I don't like him. I'm kind of against him. I think he benefited that. He's a nice horse, but I don't think he's at the caliber of these horses. So just from that perspective, I think he's even though he's a Q1 square, I don't feel he's in the kind of league of those other horses that we mentioned previously.
Agreed.
Yeah, nothing to add.
Okay.
I guess the one thing I would say, I just think he tries hard and has done so against good horses. So maybe from an underneath perspective, if the pace is not as high, I think maybe
absolutely
that kind of horse.
I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's something we should talk about. It's like, that kind of thing is like, do you see the horse winning or do you see the horse underneath, or that kind of stuff? Maybe a good thing to talk about. All right, 10 was the other Q1 square. And this is the horse that came out of Travers. I'll ask Donald first.
I don't know what to make of this horse. I don't really have a strong opinion on him. My initial instinct is he's a step below the top contenders in here. So I really don't know where to go with this one. So someone else take the wheel here.
Well, the only thing I would say, he's kind of progressive. He's lightly raced. That was a pretty big effort, I thought, in the Travers, right? I mean, I just think there's a lot of freak. And this horse was second. So, I mean, if you look at a horse that's going to be like, talking about underneath horses, I don't know what this horse is going to be like, 20 to 1, 15 to 1.
Probably 15-ish.
Yeah.
I think one thing you could say positive about this horse with the nature of the September Derby is I think a lot of these horses that we're going to look at, especially second and third tier horses, have been exposed for what they are because of the fact that this horse took the time off after 2 dominant performances and kind of had a little bit of a trouble trip, I thought, in the Peter Pan, or at least not as good as the winner that day, Country Grammar. And then, as you mentioned, ran into a buzzsaw and tis the law on the Travers. He hasn't really been exposed, and like you said, Don, he's moved forward in all of his races. So I think out of the kind of second tier horses, he might have some of the most upside if you're looking to, use a horse in horizontals or bet somebody that you'll get a little more bang for your buck with.
Yeah, I think he's just a good kind of exotic type because he hasn't done anything wrong. And I think the price is just going to be there. I think he'll be a horse that people just kind of go, I don't know what to do with him. He's kind of second by default, all that. But could just be a horse that kind of just sticks around and fills up those underneath spots. And most people try to use like the more closing type horses, but he just kind of fits as sort of the one that could just have himself in the right position to stay there late.
And he's that nice, he's a square too, so we know he can finish, right? So we know he's got finishability. So yeah. Anything to add on that one? Anyone else have anything on him? Okay, we're gonna go to, let's pick up the Q1 circles, because those are, horses that, they could win the Derby, but again, you want to be looking at smaller squares when we talk about these horses. So we're going to start off the one which is probably the most likely Q1 circle to maybe win the race would be Authentic. And again, I know Emily maybe talk about this horse a little too, but I was not impressed with this horse's win in the Haskell. That day, that track was really speed favoring. He had all his kind of own way on the front end and got home, but he really kind of struggled. We talked about New York traffic pushing him to his limits. And I'm just concerned that 10 furlongs is just too long for this horse. And I don't know, you may want to talk about maybe the California races and what you've seen on them.
I think your impression in the Haskell is my impression in California. He hasn't impressed me at all with his races. He's had those good trips that have been able to kind of help get him wins. You can see all the red keywords in there. And then he's just quirky. A lot of those, that green where he kind of lugs out and he still looks around. I know it's going to be an empty, center of the track, not going to be a loud Derby, but he's still not one that when it really starts closing late, and the horse is finishing up, a time for him to start getting goofy and looking around. So yeah, I'm not excited about this horse.
Yeah, he may be even a play against in the exotics, right? Maybe you can get him out of the exotics because he'll take money, right? Don't you think?
Well, Bobby B usually does.
Big money.
I think he's going to be, I think they've got no choice but to send aggressively with this horse, but I think he's a one-turn miler. I think he might, if he comes back next year and matures a little, maybe he's a Met Mile type horse for Baffert. Maybe he peaked already, but he won't be on any of my wagers in any position.
Whoa, bold. I like it. Love it. Donald, what do you think about him? Anything?
I'm not using him. Because
Wow.
it feels like unless he somehow gets away in that opening quarter and for whatever reason is left alone, that's the only way I could see him hanging around. And he's going to be overplayed just based on the connections. And that grid with all the red, no thanks.
All right.
Unanimous toss.
That's a head. Okay, I'm just going down to Q1's circles and some of these horses.
This one's fun. Can I start?
Yeah.
I suspect this dude's going to be a little bit of a steam horse. I just happened to watch his workout. He's got a little freak to him. The workout on August 22nd, you can actually watch it on XBTV. Now, one thing I will say is I haven't seen this guy train regularly, so I'm not sure what his normal attitude is. But he was very aggressive, but it was almost like a playful aggressive. It wasn't rank. It was more like he just kind of kept letting the rider know, I want to run today. And I think he ended up getting a 58-1, and he did it all on his own and galloped out like a freaking freight train. So this guy has as much talent, I think, as anyone in the field. That Tampa Bay race was really nice. So I just find him interesting. He's coming off a long layoff. There's a lot of different reasons why you shy away from him. But just off that one workout, because I'm a clocker and I like that kind of stuff. He's kind of a fun horse to see what he can do.
Donald, can I ask you a question from clocking? What you've seen from him in the morning? I've seen him. He's out there every day. He's like the buzz horse, and I know that workout. Does he look like a horse that is going to be able to relax coming off a layoff or with all these work?
Yeah, that's the thing. That drill was awesome, but he was borderline headstrong. He kind of was flicking his head around, and if he does that in the race, he's got no chance. But the way he uses himself, his extension in terms of his stride just screams 1.25 miles. But like you say, if that fresh, aggressive behavior shows itself in the race when he needs to settle, he's got no chance. He's a toss. So that's kind of one of those deals where maybe you have to let the price dictate your actions.
Yeah, I'm
this is good information because this may be a horse, even if he doesn't do well here for whatever reason, a horse you want to watch down the road based on kind of that your analysis. This sounds like this horse has talent. So someone at least put on your list, even if it's not today and not this race and what have you. Maybe doesn't have the seasoning, doesn't have the, whatever.
They've used just unorthodox approach to this race, to pretty much all of the racing. Their trainers from Venezuela's won tons and tons of races from there. But he's done nothing wrong. It's just such an unorthodox approach, and then the aggressiveness. And it's definitely a topic of conversation type horse for sure. I think my gut tells me he's going to be hard to relax, and part of the reason why I think the pace is going to be more contentious than maybe the more recent years past.
Yeah, Emily, I do want to ask you that Arkansas Derby. I see he set a pocket trip, and there was nothing rank about him. What did you think about that race?
In the extended comment, it says right there, I mean, good trying effort behind winners. I don't think distance wise, it kind of seemed like that he was quite at his best going to 9, but had try. And then I also wrote, like, tough to see kind of a move forward from him, with that being just sort of like a top, for the level. So that kind of just, it concerns me a little bit in terms of being in this spot. Because of all those factors. I mean, the pace, the class, the distance, pace primarily. I mean, the layoff is different because, in years past, if like horses were training up to the Derby, you'd have horses that are really, lightly raced, young 3-year-old horses. And in this case, you have, there's still 3-year-old horses, but it's like a world of difference, it being 4 months later, that extra 4 months in terms of like maturity and stuff. So I think it's different than in years past being like training up to the Derby. But again, I mean, you're coming off a layoff, doing something, you haven't done, especially if it's being a little rank in the morning, and then having some steam. Those are all just factors to me that seem like underlay potential. And there's kind of, I'm having a hard time finding, like, in a field like this where there's some contenders and other horses that fit underneath, where there's a place for him.
I do find it interesting that, his career best effort came off the longest layoff before now, the 98 days off of turf racing into a Tampa Bay race where he kind of exploded.
Yeah.
And obviously it's a completely different circumstance.
It's like a tier 2 track, just so, I don't know. I know that I don't know how good was that Derby. I guess we can look and see how it came back, because I just think, just trying to see.
Soleil Valente ran second.
Okay, and he's
nobody else ran, but he just ran off the screen. It was kind of a combination of the two.
Yeah.
It didn't come back. I mean, Spa City was the favorite, I think.
Now I'm starting to remember. It kind of freaked me out. So
Unrighteous was supposed to be a good horse, has not turned out to be.
Yeah. Not really.
Not the strongest ever.
No, not at all.
So wow. Well, hey, look, we spent a lot more time on King William than I thought we were going to spend. That was good, though. It was interesting. It's good it was a good conversation about it. So 1,000 words is the next Q1C. That's why I'm kind of going in the order I'm going in. So. This is California.
Yeah, I can talk about him because I've kind of been following him. Yeah, California, and then even at Oakland. Obviously starting off, nothing wrong, right? Had the contender, perfect trip, first time out, improved his speed figures in those graded stakes company, and then just like flat in the San Felipe, just kind of no real excuse for that effort. Some excuse could be made, for the Oakland Park. I think there was a stumble there. Would probably have to check.
There was a stumble.
Yeah.
There was a stumble.
And just, it was just not an effective trip for him. So when he started to come back and it was entered in the Los Alamitos Derby, and I was watching his works, leading up to that race, I was, trying to see, like, what horse is he? Is he the horse that started off his career with 3 wins, or is he the horse that ran in the San Felipe and at Oakland? Like, what horse are we getting? And because I believe, was there an equipment change at that time, or did it come later?
They took the blinkers off for the Los Al
Derby. Off at that time, right? So I was trying to see, like, what we were dealing with. And watching his works, there was a couple drills where he was kind of sitting off the workmate and was just like so average. And I'm like, all right, we've got he's just no good anymore. We've seen this with these Baffert horses that start early, they kick butt, and then they just fall off, right? And then there was this one drill where he went to the front, out in front of his workmate, and it was just like a completely different horse. And I'm like, oh, this is the key. This horse he's got to be out in front. Like if they put him out in front, he can get right back into form. And so I thought going into Los Alamitos Derby, that's what they would do. And obviously the slog and then his stablemate, Uncle Chuck, like went on the front end. So I'm like, he just didn't get, it ran fine, was an improvement, obviously. But in the shared belief, I'm like, they're going to go to the front. Like I've seen this horse. This is how this horse needs to be ridden. We've got a 4-horse field. Like he's going to go. So I think that's something to keep in mind with this horse is just, when he gets behind horses, you might get a complete no-show. And so for him, it's got to be, they get him in front. If he gets a perfect trip, he can run a race that can compete. It'll really come down. Post will be important. Who's ever riding him is going to be important because he needs that assertive hand.
They got Giroux on him, so I'm sure they're sending. I mean, that's about his.
The more and more I listen to you guys, the more and more I agree with Emily. This probably is going to be somewhat of a contentious.
I don't think he's fast enough though to make the lead. Like unless we're overly aggressive, ridden. Do you, Em?
Well, I don't know because it's like he's never really. I mean, he might not, but where's he on the plot? Is he kind of down? I mean, he just hasn't really been able to go to the front since that last race, right?
7, Emily, so he's here.
Yeah, but again, I mean, there's no ease types in this race, according to the RPM. So maybe he takes that role, and then Scott's right. Maybe he's just not fast enough. But I think in terms of if you're, going to use this horse in some capacity, that's what you have to hope for is to get an aggressive trip, because that's his only chance. And then whether he's good enough is a completely different.
Yeah. So what I'm gathering here, I'm going to go through the last 2 Q1Cs that right now the Q1Cs we're against. We're really kind of against these horses. This is, I'm going to ask, this is Donald and Emily. So Donald, you saw the last race of Rushy, the Bluegrass. What'd you think of, he didn't keep up. So,
I just don't think he's good enough.
Not good enough. Do we need to spend a lot of time on Rushy?
I think he's at least 50-50 to be in the Pate Mile anyway. Okay.
So we're going to probably toss that horse anyway. And then the last Q1 circle is Storm the Court. This horse just looks too slow, right?
He's a grade 3 horse, right? That's what it comes down to.
That's the Q1. Now we're going to go to the Q2 squares, and we're going to start off with the 8 Dr. Post, who I like. It's just as a horse, I think he's built for a 1.25 miles. I liked him in the Haskell. I was going to bet him in the Haskell, and he just got the wrong track that day, so I actually pulled my bet back. I still think he's better going longer. Scott, you said he might not be in this race. He's pointed somewhere else.
Yeah, I was super surprised and kind of bummed because he was kind of my 3rd horse with Tisdale and Honore P, especially underneath. Sounds like we think similar on him, and you guys have stretch notes on him coming out of a 1 mile and an 1/8 race, which is even stronger. But yeah, they announced today that it sounds like I don't know why they're thinking about the Jim Dandy or just bypassing, maybe going right to the Preakness. Doesn't exude a lot of confidence though. And
I think that's like such a negative because he looks so great, right? Like there's no reason why you wouldn't run him in this spot. If it was like a normal year, you'd be like, all right, Pletcher's going to skip, they're going to run in the Belmont, but he already did that. So you don't have that option. Right. And that's really weird.
It's weird because you can kind of, he has just everything you look for as a price type horse in this race. He looks like he wants to go longer. You could make an excuse for the last race with the Haskell kind of against the flow in the racetrack that day. The Belmont, 1 mile and an 1/8. He's just kind of a grinder. So,
he ran great in that race. Law is going to be the favorite. This horse, just lost to him in a race where, he had a little bit against him, I thought. Because that track, I think even on the Belmont Day, I think the track was favoring speed horses, and the inside. So, I mean, this horse has been against it the last 2 races. So, yeah, I mean, that's real kind of a negative sign that they're not looking at this race more seriously. I'm surprised. So
came out of nowhere today to me. I don't know about anybody else, but I was
same.
borderline shocked.
We'll reassess it as it gets closer to the race. And then the other one was Max Player, the other Q2 Square. And I love this horse. I mean, I just think this horse is a distance horse. He's a grinder. Ran great. I think he ran great in Travers. He's progressive. He's more of an underneath horse than anything. I don't see him capable of winning this race. I just think he's going to give. But if they really heat it up front, I just wouldn't completely ignore this horse.
Donald, did you see his workout yesterday or Monday?
I think that's a no, because I would remember. I assume it was on the main track.
It was at the main track at Churchill. He's just entered the Steve Asmussen barn from the Linda Rice barn. So,
oh yeah, no, I definitely didn't see it because I'm in New York. So,
I just meant if you saw, yeah, I just wondered if you saw it on video.
Oh, I don't know if they have it on video. I'll have to check it out.
You can go to the YouTube Kentucky Derby channel if you want to see it. It's
cool.
up on there. But I mean, it got encouraging. I thought encouraging remarks from the people that watched it that I respect most as clockers, and I think it's interesting. I mean, we've seen Steve Asmussen.
Ownership too, Scott, or just
what's that?
Was it a change in ownership too? Was someone buy a piece of the horse, or was it...
I don't know what the deal. It's George Hall. I don't know if you guys know who that is.
George Hall, yeah, from New Jersey. I mean,
yeah. I don't know what the actual business side of it was. It was kind of a weird deal. The one thing though that I've seen Steve be able to do to some horses is maybe that haven't had speed is maybe put a little more speed into them when he's gotten them into his barn. I mean, obviously, a horse like Midnight Bisou he got was already very good, turned into a legitimate, champion mare or filly, whatever. But I like this horse too, and I'm just wondering if he's maybe if he peaked in the trying to figure out if I think he peaked in the Travers or whether Steve's going to move him forward another notch, and then he's really a player.
I mean, these are great notes on this horse too. I followed this. I mean, I just knew this horse was distance bound when I first saw this horse ran. I like when these 2-year-olds don't run these big gaudy numbers, but you can see that they have capability going along. I marked him as a marathon horse back at Aqueduct when he won the Withers. I bet him that day. He's on the improve. He's just done nothing wrong. He's one of those. Again, he's a grinder. I don't know if he has the ability to win this race, but definitely to be able to compete underneath. Anybody else on Max Player?
I am now.
Yeah, no, I think he's very logical. When I was doing the Jason Beam show earlier, I kind of just made the remark, he's going to be the horse just like everybody talks about, like, I'm going to key him in third type of horse, everyone like has that type of, yeah, okay, we get it. Like that.
Was that a subtle shot at John?
That's a shot. That's a shots fired at quite a few people, to be honest.
I do think he replaces. He does kind of replace the Dr. Post for me. That I was excited to kind of have as a mid-tier type horse that I'll hope to get in the mix. So.
Yeah, I mean, because he's going to be. That's a good plot, right?
Not as good as Dr. Post's.
Yeah. Post is gone. He's going to sit.
Oh man.
So now the last two are the. I'm not going to go through all unless you guys have the Q3 and Q4 circles. I'm just going to ignore right now unless you guys have.
Wait a second. Let's not ignore one of them.
But even before we go there, let's go to the Q4 squares. Now, these are the horses that have the best chance, according to Albus Bach, to finish in the exacta, right? So I want to get your point of view on these horses. So let's start with the number 16, and that's Soleil Valente. Scott, what do you think of this horse?
I thought when the Derby was supposed to be run back in May, I kind of thought this horse was kind of coming into the position where he could be that horse that Emily wants to rip people for, the Max Player, the horse that everybody would pick for third. But
getting contentious.
But then the more I looked at the more I watched this horse, A, he might have peaked, and B, he might be more of a miler. So I do like the idea of he's going to be a big price. I just don't know if he's for me.
Anybody else?
I mean, I think he's a grass horse. I could see using him in the bottom slots of the exotics, but I've always thought he's supposed to be on grass, but he's talented enough where if you're an owner, it's hard to not take your shot just because he's shown, he's still a really good horse on dirt. So.
Emily, you got any opinion on him?
Yeah, I agree with all that stuff. I think he's class compromised, distance compromised to some extent. I mean, the Belmont you can toss. I remember we did the show, and I talked about how they kind of blew it in terms of having him peaked for the wrong race. When they were pointing to the Belmont and just trying to get him a race off the bench. So he runs well fresh, but I can't see, in like a spread underneath. He'd even be hard for me to key underneath.
Okay, the next one is Finnick the Fierce. Okay, there's a bluegrass horse. This horse, I mean, we got a note here, shorter, Donald. That's your
This
note.
is the horse I wanted to like. I thought he was a 1.25 mile horse. And then that bluegrass kind of pushed me off of him because I love the movie Made on the Turn. It was legit. And then all of a sudden, it's like he was going to be an easy second or third. And he just flattened. And unless he had legitimate issues in terms of bleeding, there's no other thing to go to other than he's, to borrow a phrase from Emily, distance compromised.
Oh, by the way, I just want to know, I know how I click this and you see this box come up. Don't forget, folks, people that are watching this, is the extended comments. Don't ever forget they're there. When that little blue circle's there, you want to read more because sometimes it could be valuable. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then the running line kind of looks similar in the Arkansas Derby, right? Like he kind of was in contention and then kind of flattened out a little bit. Just
That
in
tells
terms
me
of
it's distance. That really would tell me it's different distance and level and class in this horse.
yeah.
I think he hasn't really I think he hasn't really matured, and I think the plotty word fits pretty well also.
So we got 16 and 17 don't look like our exacted horses. Let's go to our last Q2 square, and that is enforceable. Could this horse be our exacta horse?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, cool. So who wants to start off? Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, this is a horse that early on in the calendar, kind of a little bit before everybody starts coming back, this horse matured, kind of like War of Will did at Fairgrounds for Cassie last year. Different running style, but won the Lecomte, got second in the Risen Star against the flow of the race that day. I think you guys probably have that as well. Yeah. And then in Louisiana Derby, kind of disappointed that day and really hadn't been seen since. But came back in the Bluegrass and, didn't run awesome, but all the top three were all way ahead of him. So the flow wasn't in his favor that day. And I thought it might have set him up for what could be a good second off the layoff type race, especially if the pace of the race is contentious like we think it might be. He's got a second and a third in 3 starts at Churchill, with the only 4th place finish being in that Kentucky Jockey Club, which was a sloppy racetrack that day, the same race Tisdall finished 3rd in. So maybe it was just a goofy track that day. So I think of all the long shots, and he'll be a long shot, I think he's the most interesting to kind of get into the gimmicks.
I agree. I do agree.
Yeah, I might have should have put a prep on that Bluegrass race. Now that I'm looking back at it, it kind of has that feel where they know where they were going. So I can dig that analysis.
Yeah, because I like this horse. When I was watching at Fairgrounds, I was doing the Fairgrounds this year, and I thought all the Fairground races that he ran in were good, and I thought those races were solid. And so, I think this horse, I like this horse because he's, I think he may be a horse that has upside versus some of these others in here who might have already peaked. So I think he's definitely an underneath kind of horse.
And as a tap-in, he might still be maturing mentally. They tap in, a lot of those are head cases. He might not have been. He might have been one that just peaked early, but there's always the possibility that he's mentally figuring it out a little bit more.
Emily, anything else to add on this horse?
No, I think everybody kind of hit
Okay,
it.
good. So we've completed the horses that typically do well according to their plot. Now, there's horses, you can see again, we'll go back to, I just want to flip back here. You know, all the Q3, Q4 circles are usually negative. But Emily, I know she has a horse that she wants to blurt out here. So
Yeah. I'm going to
She
explode
has that
waiting to
witchcraft.
talk about this
I
horse.
never
Well,
found her
I mean, my heart could be broken because Scott mentioned that the number 15 attachment rate might run somewhere else. But if they don't, this horse has a legit look in here. So, like, here's the case. His debut, I figure we can toss it because he didn't show up for 211 days off the debut. Draw line through, ran really well, coming back, you know, off the bench, starting off this season. Improved from that, ran well even in the Gotham traffic. He hasn't really run kind of bad races. He's been a little bit progressive, and seems to have figured out the no lead thing as of late, which is a big positive. Going back and watching his last couple races, this is just sort of what I liked about him in terms of form cycle. So in the Bluegrass, it's kind of his first race back, broke a little bit slow. Donald wrote the move. I thought there was even kind of a little bit of a, I wouldn't have like given the keyword to moves or like wrote about it, but he did show a move to kind of put himself in position after breaking a little bit slow, and then showed a late move. And I thought just kind of overall, it was one of those races, considering the layoff, considering the trip, considering the way the track profile played. Scott mentioned talking about the last horse in Forcible that we were talking about, how like those other horses were all forwardly placed throughout. So considering the trip, I thought he gave like a really good effort in there. And then in the Ellis Park Derby, I know, John, you did the note, but it kind of made me watch this race. And I thought that was another just like really good effort for him, which is just not quite his trip, where he was kind of wide in a stalking trip. But what I liked about this horse, just kind of overall in this race, is we looked at it. I know the plot sucks. Like, the plot definitely sucks. But if you're just kind of projecting the way that this horse runs, where he has ability to kind of put himself in the race, and he's finishing. So even in the Ellis Park Derby with Art Collector being on the front end and running clear, both those horses were still running to the wire. They were both still finishing. So he's finishing, and I think he'll handle the added distance. And just kind of like the way, in terms of his progression, being the third start of the form cycle, moving forward with each of those races. And then, you know, with the pace setting up, that if it is contentious, if it is fast, kind of being in the horse that could get a kind of first run position on some of those closers, you know, sitting in kind of a max player type spot, even though his plot is what it is. But just to me, he looked like a progressive type. You know, if they don't run here, that's that. But I think he's got a look in this race.
He did run a great race in the Ellis Park Derby. Really, really good race.
When Dale Romans decides not to run in the Kentucky Derby when he has an option, it'll be news. But as of now, they're saying Pat Day-Mile is more likely. So
Really? Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, is there any other?
You can give him my phone number. He can call me, and I'll
I'm sure he's got. I mean, maybe the owners are the ones. I can't imagine Mr. Romans is not thinking that this horse.
This horse is right.
We're all Derby winners for him.
I know. I met him at a couple of things at functions and stuff, and I was an idiot to tell him to put. Well, geez, what was his? What was the horse that finished second at the Derby? His horse.
Shackelford.
I just told him he needs the turf. So that's
you couldn't help yourself, huh?
Good on the turf. He goes, yeah, no, we're thinking about it. Like he kind of just, okay, yeah, idiot, you moron. Okay, so anyway, is there any other of these Q3 or Q4 circles anyone else likes?
Negative.
I mean, the 20 and 21, let's see. I mean, 21's a total wild card money moves. I mean, took on older at Saratoga and almost beat older horses, but is lightly raced. I know he's highly thought of, but it's a huge.
I mean, it is Cardi B's summer, so we got that going for you.
But yeah, I mean, it's hard to really think that a horse this lightly raced in a race with horses now even with more experience. But the fact that they're looking at the race is a little interesting, and I don't think the distance will be an issue.
All right. Well, then I think we've got it. I think we've covered everything.
Well, I think we should talk about the 20 because
The what?
he's worth talk. I think we should talk
The
about
20?
the 20. Yeah,
Mhm.
because I think people be interested in this horse. I mean, not the most kind of classic horse, but he's been
That's
impressive
like
in
almost
both.
like a Dubai horse winning the Derby, right?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I mean he's worth mentioning is when he broke his maiden first out, he was like so much hype on Twitter of like the next great horse that's ever lived.
Well, if it's on Twitter,
of course, right? And I mean, it was good, right? Like, I mean, all those keywords, the B plus, you know, he is pressed, closed, gallop, no push. I mean, that's all positive. Same thing, you know, came back a best of the speed, a B plus. So, you know, I mean, in terms of a horse, there's you know, talent there. But this is just a really big test for a horse that's only raced twice, hasn't run on the dirt. Kind of has shown just that one type of running style, so could get caught up with the others. But I think there will be like attention, at least chatter on him that's, you know, worth a mention.
Oh yeah. Did you see that workout that they did?
I have not. No. What did you?
They like
see
put
on it?
4 horses. It was like a 4-horse drill. It was like orchestrated. I'm not enough of a workout expert to even try to describe what I saw. It was something else though. I mean, I guess they were trying to kind of give him some sort of experience that he needs going into a race like this, but definitely worth watching for anybody out there that hasn't seen it, just for, I mean, something different in entertainment. But it was well orchestrated by Roger Atfield. I'll give him that.
At Singapore, you know, I mean, they basically run races,
Right.
which is pretty cool. I mean, I mean, they're not real races, but yeah, I think that's pretty good. I mean, I don't know. So these works, Donald knows better than I do. I mean, what I love about what he does and what he talks about, and Emily talks about it too, is that it's all in context of what these horses do. And that's why with our optics works, we only do Southern California, but we keep the workouts of the horse's entire career so that you can compare and contrast and really understand, is the horse really improving, or is just that's the way the nature of the horse is, that he's a good workout horse. I think that's the most important thing. And having that kind of information, I think, is an edge versus just having all the horses working good and coming into the race. You know, it could be whoopity-doo, right?
no, there's going to be a lot of misinformation in terms of people commenting on horses they've only seen train once, which is just kind of pointless. But you know, you got to fill airtime.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know about anybody else, but I watch these shows. There might be a few people, like when Twin Spires, I guess it's who's it, Gary, the guy that Twin Spires has. I forget his name.
We had Gary Young in the past,
Gary
but
Young.
not this
Gary
year.
Young,
Yeah.
I respect. You know, I mean, when I hear him, I listen because, you know, he's got context.
I can't stand that guy.
But he's pretty good. So
He's solid.
I respect Kobe.
I'm kind of hoping this gets back to Gary. We used to talk trash every morning at Santa Anita.
So, I mean, other than that, I mean, like a lot of these, like you watch some of these workout shows and like everyone looks great, right? They're really, because they're not looking at these horses regularly. So unless it's a guy like Donald or Toby or Gary, I just don't pay much attention. Or Emily tells me. Emily gives me perspective too, and that's it. And that's what I use. So look, it's all about information. But I think we provided the audience here with a good perspective, good layout of the race. You know, we talked about optics and the plot and some good analytics on that perspective, but also got into the form cycle of these horses and what we think. So I think it was a really good, productive hour here. So thanks, everyone. And I just want to let everyone know, too, that what we're going to be doing for the races, there's a $50 package, Derby package. You get the Friday and Saturday. You get all the races for both Kentucky and all the tracks. You get optics plot, optics notes, and we're going to do analysis, full card analysis on Saturday. You get all the races. Let me just see if I have here. I'll show you kind of if I have it. Oh, no, I have it. Maybe I know. A preview of what to. Well, what we do is we do a plot analysis, interpretation, then go through every horse and give you a label on each of the horses to tell you, what the horse's chances are versus his odds, basically. So it's a pretty good complete package. So take a look at that, and I think Derby's going to be exciting. It's going to be an exciting card, and hopefully some great racing. Anything else, guys, in closing?
You guys all look tremendous.
Yeah.
I'm a tremendous slouch. Yeah, but don't sell yourself short, Judge. You're a tremendous slouch.
Yeah, have a good night, guys.
All right,
All
everyone.
right,
Yeah,
good luck,
thank you.
everybody.
Appreciate it.